Hello, this is Hannah with Hannah Crafted Gifts, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of a tutorial today in anticipation of an upcoming swap that I am participating in with a group of local demos I've met here in New Jersey. We call ourselves the North-ish Jersey SU demos because we've kind of been making friends with people all over Jersey and even into like Pennsylvania, where I'm originally from. And so anyway, we have a swap coming up and we are focusing on product from the new mini catalog, January to April 2023. Still getting used to that, and mini catalog rather. And also focusing on techniques. But the challenge is there's so many of us coming to this swap, we have to be able to make the projects in about 15 minutes each so we can make all of them. So I wanted to do a tutorial to share with you today what I'll be sharing with them. I think it's still a little bit in its development stage, and to get the timing to see if this is going to work. So I've already in my mind made some changes to this card, mainly with the sentiment. So I'm going to cover that up to start. So this is what the card will be like. I want to add my sentiment on the inside, but for this first one I made, I put it on the outside. So we'll see, we can compare and contrast and see which one we like. But now that the light's catching that, hopefully you can see this beautiful Watercolor World Stamp, which is a background stamp from the new catalog. It's probably my favorite thing in the new catalog because I love travel and learning about different places and people and their cultures. And this stamp, you know, captures the whole world, although Australia is a little bit covered by my sentiment, part of the reason I want to put it inside. But this uses a couple techniques. The main one is Emboss Resist. So I've embossed the stamped image with clear embossing powder on crumb cake cardstock. So that's why it looks like that color of crumb cake. But it also has that shine, that great gloss when it catches the light. And then I've also done a lot of distressing, as you can see, because I wanted this to look like an old found map. And so I've done some blending brushing, some like, I guess, edging work along the edge to have it peeling and curling and ruffled. And I've also crinkled the whole thing. And you can see, I didn't expect this, but I kind of like that it put these cracks into the clear embossing powder. And so it just really does look antiqued. So this is what I'm going to make with you. We're going to see how long it takes. So let's give it a go. Hopefully it'll be close to 15 minutes. If not, I'm going to have to do some extra prep so there's less steps for my friends. So let me try to flip my camera. This is always a little bit of a challenge. So let's see if it works. I'm going to cover it up so I don't make you ill from the movement. So let's see here. I got to stretch out my device, and then can I flip? Nope. Okay, so I'm going to have to do this. All right, so hopefully now you're seeing my desktop. And let me see if I can tighten that so that it doesn't fall. All right, now I'm gonna peek up at you and see what you're seeing. That'll do. All right, so you're still seeing a corner of my card. Here's the original card. I'm gonna see if I can keep everything in view for you, move some of the other things on my desk out of the way. Okay, so I've gone ahead and cut my pieces in advance. So this is a standard 8.5 was by 11 piece of cardstock. I've cut it down to 5.5 so that when I fold it in half, and I've got my score line here at 4.25. So it was 8.5 by 11. I've cut it down to 8.5 by 5.5, scored at 4.25. So I'm folding it in half. Hopefully that all makes sense and all my measurements are correct. Sometimes when I get on video, I get myself mixed up. So I'm thinking of so many things at once and also sometimes feeling the nerves. Okay, so there's that. And then this is a piece of 5.5 by 4.25, so that full card front. But you'll see we'll get just ever so slightly a white border because we are, you know, wrinkling this up and everything. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment first because, like I said, I'm going to try it on the inside this time. I'm going to move the original out of the way here for a few minutes. And the reason I stamp first is because if I don't like how it turns out the first time, then I can flip the way I've folded the card and make that my card front. So actually, I should have done this before I even folded. That way I wouldn't have a little bit of a messy fold from folding it back the other way. Hopefully the first time will work. But if not, I do have that other option, like I said, to make the inside bottom, the outside front that's gonna get covered up by our map. And I'm using Cajun Craze ink. You'll also see I'm gonna use soft suede later as well. So I'm just going to stamp right in the middle. You matter to so many. And this comes from the Something Fancy stamp set, which is from another one of my favorite suites in the catalog, the Fancy Flora suite. Here's the stamp set. But I thought You Mattered to So Many works really well with, you know, the whole world on there. And maybe you saw I used these Adhesive-Backed dots. And I think I'm going to add some more on the next version of this project, but it's, you know, meant to kind of represent like some of the many that you matter to. So I feel like this is just a really good, encouraging card for any occasion. And that stamp worked out pretty well, so I'm going to keep that as my inside. So I'll go ahead and burnish this again with my bone folder. The bone folder is really key in this project. I am not usually big on the bone folder, but we really do need it when we come to the distressing. So you can see I've already done some blending on this piece, but I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm not going to blend yet. I'm going to stamp first, of course. So let me pull in my Stamparatus, which I have set up with the stamp. And with the Stamparatus, it's great for multiples. It's great for stamps that you may have to stamp more than once, like these background stamps. Sometimes because they cover so much paper, it's helpful to be able to stamp a couple times to really get everything clearly. But you don't want the stamp to be too close to the side or the top edge. So top to bottom, I'm going to be okay because this stamp is wider than it is tall. But I had to move my paper over a little bit, so that's why I'm using the magnet. And I've just counted in, that's why these grids are really helpful, 3 squares from each, so I'll remember where to place the paper for each next one that I make. All right, so I don't have the Versamark ink, which is what Stampin' Up! Sells for embossing. So I have this other brand, but very similar. It's basically just like a really sticky ink. Versamark is almost like glue. This one's a little more liquidy, as you can see in the bottle. But basically, it just allows you to adhere the embossing powder, which will then melt into, in this case, clear. So we'll see that crumb cake brown through it. But you can do black, white, metallics like gold, silver, bronze, or copper. I can't remember which Stampin' Up! Calls theirs, but with the clear, you can do any color though, because not only can you do clear on top of colored paper and it will show that color through, you can stamp, and this would be another great use for the Stamparatus, stamp in a color of ink, then clean it off, stamp on top with the clear, well, with the medium, and then with the clear embossing powder, and it will make it look like it's, well, because it will be raised and glossy, but you won't just see, you know, clear raised gloss. You'll see through to the, say, the red or the blue or whatever color underneath. So I'm just pushing down really well so that hopefully, I think that's pretty good coverage actually. Hopefully you're seeing all that, and hopefully I'm in view. So I'm going to pull that off while that liquid is wet. And sometimes you can do this just with ink, but sometimes ink dries too fast. So that's why it's great to have Versamark, or like I said, this alternate that I have. So I also have another brand of clear embossing powder. I have gotten the Stampin' Up, but I'm trying to get through my old stash first. So I'm just going to pour that generously over top, because I'm going to be able to gather it back up later. That's what this great tray is for. Stampin' Up! Sold this bigger tray in the past. They sell a smaller one now, and the smaller one would certainly do, as I'm sure you can tell. So I'll be able to gather this back up later. That's why I have my paintbrush. But for now, I'm going to kind of tilt it each way just to make sure that I am fully covering. There's a lot of like little islands in this stamp that I want to get. I want the whole world represented. I wish Barbados was on here. My mom is from the island of Barbados, and I'm not sure that made it in. That'd be hard to fit in a teeny tiny little Barbados in the Caribbean there, but there are lots of little Caribbean islands. Maybe it is one of those dots. I just know Barbados tends to be, I know we're looking at it upside down, I look at it right side up. Barbados tends to be kind of East Caribbean, and I don't see it there. So maybe I could just add it on one of these times. And I did forget to use my embossing buddy, so that would keep the bits of embossing powder off that aren't part of the stamp. But I'm just gonna keep tapping a little bit to hopefully get some of that errant embossing powder off. And now, give me a moment. I'm gonna go, you're gonna hear the machine. Maybe I'll skip through this in post-production, or maybe just bear with me, but I'm gonna use my heat tool to emboss this. Let me see if I can't quite pull it over where the video will see. Okay, so just trust me on the magic that's gonna happen over here. I wish you could have seen the magic that was that embossing. It's one of my favorite things to watch because you watch it go from that kind of, you know, dusty powder to this melted, liquid, shiny, glossy look. Just so fun. And look how great that is even just like that. Now on this first one, I think I may have over distressed it because you can almost not see the world anymore. Certainly not as boldly as this one. So I'm trying to find a happy medium between the two, but you can see how, you know, this would be plain and simple, which can be good. But it certainly wouldn't look like an old map. It would look like a new old map, and we want it to look truly old. So now I'm going to pull in my blending brushes. I've got one for each color because we're going to use the Cajun Craze again. I wasn't sure how I'd like the Cajun Craze. It's not a color I use very often, but I was pleasantly surprised because it had a real, like, you know, reddish, rusty tone to it. And I really liked that. And then I've got the soft suede here. So I'm going to start with the Cajun Craze, just get a little on my brush, and then brush that off a little bit so it's not too dark when I start. And then the way I did the last one is I kind of tried to put it around the continents. So concentrate on the masses of land I have here. Almost like, because again, it had this, you know, cheery kind of love tone to it. When I think of, you know, reds like this rust, I think of love. And so I thought it's like the love is radiating off the land. And you can see the difference. It is covering over that clear embossing powder that we've melted and changing that color a little bit, but that is going to wipe off a little bit because the embossed parts are going to resist the ink. And so we're going to come back at the end, hopefully. Yeah, I have a paper towel available, and we're going to be able to wipe some of that away. Otherwise, it would kind of like wipe off on the hands of whoever's receiving the card. So again, I just want to get this kind of glow around the land. And there's no, you know, right or wrong way to do this, because again, we're going for a distressed look. And I might, you know, bring a little of it out to the edges too. The great thing about the blending brushes is you can kind of work slow and build up and spread it out, and really like that. Okay, so that's probably good. Let me close that up. Now for the soft suede. The soft suede is less of an accent like the Cajun Craze, or I guess in some ways it's more of an accent because we're going to use less of it. But whereas the Cajun Craze was kind of accenting the land and creating that old time look, this is really just for some distressing. And this is a darker color, of course. So this one I really do want to kind of tap off. Probably a lot because again, you can always come back. You can't take away, you can always add. So I'm just going to do like a very light kind of all over wash to start. And you know, you can start on the darker parts because then if you haven't tapped off enough, you're not, you know, putting a really dark mark in what you're wanting to be a light spot, like these open kind of ocean areas we have. Of course, I just went against my advice there because I wanted a little bit more color down here, but you notice I started that way to kind of build up my confidence. All right. All right. And then I'm going to do the edges. So I'm going to kind of brush in from the side. And then once that's brushed a bit off, I'm going to fan that out, blend that in, and just go all along. So while you're watching me do this, if you've been following, I'm curious to know what your favorite new things from the new catalog are. It's new when I'm making this. I don't know if it'll be new when you're watching this, but again, it's January to April. Our mini catalog, which I like to call the spring catalog, because it's focused on a lot of the spring season and occasions, and so there's lots of well, there's some Easter, some Mother's Day, Father's Day, baby, and a lot of just, you know, general things like flowers and foliage and sentiments to encourage and brighten someone's day. All right, so notice it's getting darker and darker. I don't want it too dark this time. The last thing I'm going to do is kind of hold up Again, hopefully you're seeing this. I see I'm working a little too close to me. Sorry about that. And just kind of go along the edge like this. You can, of course, do this with the ink pad itself, but then that's a little darker, a little harsher. And so, like I said, I think I said I really like the subtlety you can achieve with the blending brushes. Okay, I'm breaking up my brush a little bit. I gotta be careful about that. Okay, and so that's gonna be that for now. So let me move all this over, or I'm not gonna knock it onto the ground. And let me get my paper towel. Let me get a good paper towel. Once again, I'll be right back. Thanks for bearing with me. Like I said, this is a bit of a trial as I'm preparing for this swap, but I thought I'd share it with you while I'm working. So you're getting to see how I really work. Maybe sped up, maybe not, depending on my patience for post-production. So you see, I'm just going to use the paper towel to kind of wipe off that ink on the embossing, because as much as I like that look, you know, it would come right off on my finger. So I'm just going to wipe that away a bit. And then it just leaves behind everything that's on the paper, but not on my stamped image. Ooh, I guess my hand was a little wet. Well, I got a little extra distressing on this one from my wet hand, my wet paper towel. Well, hey, that adds some interest. You know what? I'm going to go ahead and go with it, and I'm going to add it a few other places just to balance it out. So let me take my wet paper towel and, well, I don't want it to be fingerprints. Let's see. Well, hey. We learned something new together. I kind of like that. I'm just playing with it. I don't want too much. Keep it subtle. But that's giving me some more color because it's playing with the ink. Kind of bringing out the yellow or like ochre color in that. So interesting. Okay. Well, good. Let's see, one more splotch up here, just a little one. All right. Cool. I actually quite like that. You can actually see on here, maybe I was playing around with another color of ink that was kind of that color. So interesting, interesting, interesting. Now I can't stop playing with it. I got to stop. Okay. All right. So now that we have that, this is where the bone folder comes back in. So I'm debating how I want to begin. I do think I want to begin with the bone folder. So I'm just going to be running the bone folder along the edge. And this takes some time. That's why I think I may have to do the embossing for this swap ahead of time. Because I think people might, if they're like me at least, might spend 15 minutes just doing the distressing from the blending brushes to the crinkling that we're doing now. So I'm just running my bone folder gently, well, sort of gently, along the edge. So I don't want to tear the paper, although you could. I had thought about that. I thought about doing some ripping, but then you could rip off part of the world, and that would be okay. You know, not like in a disrespectful way, but just in terms of the look, you know, it could look like a map that's just been a little torn and tattered, but I wanted to have the whole image on there, so I didn't do any tearing, but you could. So you could cut a bigger piece of paper than what you're wanting to end with and rip the edges. I wouldn't probably rip all the edges though, because unless it's a really old map, you know, it's not going to have been like made from parchment or something like that that didn't have an edge. But maybe, you know, one corner or one part of a side has been kind of torn off. So anyway, so I'm just now going back over to kind of curl that up even more on all the edges. So now I've got that going. And you can always kind of then like go back over it to flatten it out a bit. But now I'm going to go ahead and crinkle it. So just really, you know, it's thicker paper. It's not the thick basic white, this is crumb cake, so it doesn't even come in thick. So it's just the standard cardstock weight. But I'm not just going to like, I can do a little bit of kind of whole paper crinkling. But again, I want to be gentle with it. And you can see I'm more so like pinching with my fingers in the spaces that don't naturally crinkle in when I crinkle the whole thing. And I'm not going to do too much on the center where the stamp is, but a little bit. And again, I kind of like those cracks that develop. I assume those would develop regardless of which embossing medium and embossing powder you use, but you know, may vary a little bit. As I said, I used some non-Stampin' Up brand for that because I'm going through my old supply before I transition. Certainly excited to be exclusively Stampin' Up in everything I use, because I really do find at every turn they have just as good or better stuff than anything else I've tried. Usually much better. All right. And I should say never less good. And if there's ever a product quality issue, I have just had the best customer service experience with Stampin' Up. They always make it right and usually go above and beyond to do so. All right, so I've got some really good crinkle there, and I'm loving the added variation of not just that additional color from where the water on my hands and the paper towel got on there, but also like the texture of it, you know, the visual texture of kind of the splotch. So I'm actually going to recommend that that my Swap and Friends replicate that happy accident. Okay, I know I like flattened it out and then I crinkled it again. This could just go on and on, right? At least if you're me. So now I'm going to come back to my edges and kind of do those one more time. And the paper now is really soft. Another thing you could do to make the paper pliable is on the back or on the front if you want, again, even more of this kind of splotchy visual texture. You could do a very light mist of water. Or if you are doing it on the front, you could even do alcohol, because then that really will create a splotchy effect. But we've got enough techniques going, and again, aiming for 15 minutes here. So the last thing I'm going to do is peel up a couple corners. So just really gently, and it would help if I had longer fingernails. You can see my hands in much need of a manicure. But I'm just ever so slightly peeling because there are layers of paper. And of course, one of the great things about Stampin' Up is, you know, if it's not our basic white paper, which should be white all the way through, then it's whatever color all the way through. It's not like you peel it back and you see white and they've just dyed the front and back, but it's all the way through, in this case, the crumb cake color. So I'm just gonna kind of roll up one edge here, and I think I'm gonna do the other one as well. Although that has that great splotch, I don't want to lose too much of that. Maybe I should have done these two opposite ends, but oh well. I'll lose a little bit of it. And so I'm getting at least 2 layers. There's more, really. Looks like there's at least 3 or 4, but I'm getting at least 2 of those separated, kind of a top to bottom, so that I can have a little bit of like a curl happening on the edge. All right, so I will probably continue to play with this even after this video is done, but that is good for now. So I'm gonna bring back in my card base, move that out of the way. And easy enough, just going to adhere this down with liquid glue. Now, I'm going to be pretty generous with my glue on the back here because, of course, there's going to be those rises and falls with the wrinkles. And I don't want it to lay perfectly flat, so I want to go with that. So you can see all that great distressing we just worked so hard on. I say we. Well, you listened hard. You've been hanging in there. I'm sure this is well over 15 minutes. We're not done, but we're close. All right. So that's probably good on glue. Notice though I'm not getting very close to the edge at all, because not only do I not want it to squish out, I want these edges to continue to curl up and in. So even though this is the same size as my card base, it has shrunk a little bit from that distressing, which is good. That's what we want. So I'm just gonna make sure there's kind of an even bit of white border. And you know what? There's even more than the first one, which I'm liking. That's, you know, that's why you make a couple, right? You learn and you grow, and it gets better, hopefully, with each iteration. And again, we had some happy accidents this time that I am really liking a lot. This is definitely more interesting and more what I had envisioned and hoped to achieve. So I'm just kind of continuing to play with those edges, making sure that the glue, sorry, I'm gonna have to move it close to me for this edge, but making sure that the glue hasn't gone all the way to the edge, or if it has, I'm kind of peeling it back so that I can get that ruffle. And of course, you know, if you mail this, it might get a little squished in the mail, but it's definitely going to still show the distress. Or if you hand deliver, then you don't have to worry about that. So look at that. Now we just have to add our embellishments. So let's pull those back in. Again, these are the Rustic Metallic Adhesive-Backed dots. And I'm using my Take Your Pick tool to put those on. So let's see, I think I'm going to do, we definitely want to do odd numbers. So I'm going to do like 2 of these big ones. I'm going to put one of the big ones where I live-ish, which is New Jersey, right-ish there. And I'll do another big one. Let's see, I'll put the other big one maybe down here in Australia. Down under. And then put 3 of the small ones. So let's see, where do we want those to go? Well, we kind of want to move them around, so we move the eye around the page. So this can take me forever. I'm going to try not to take forever. Let's see, we could put one as like an island out here. Like by Hawaii. I think that's Hawaii. Somewhere in Polynesia. Haven't been, would love to go. And maybe Africa. I'm trying to mix up, you know, the heights and, well, hey, let's do it this. The latitudes and the longitudes. I think that's latitude, longitude, right? Correct me if I'm wrong. But I'm trying to keep a good mix of that. And lastly, we'll put one up here in one of these Asian countries. I think this might be China up here. Or is that still Russia and China's further southeast? I don't know. I need to travel there. I haven't been there yet either. All right. All right, so I think that's pretty good. And then on the inside, it'll say, you matter to so many. So my first version, my second version, I feel like it improved. You will see on the first version, if you do want to put your sentiment on the front, I just cut a piece of basic white a little bigger than the sentiment. And then I did the same thing in terms of crinkling and rolling up the edges with the bone folder, but I didn't want it to be too distressed because I still want you to be able to read that sentiment. But I like this one even better. Tell me which one you like better in the comments. And let me flip around so I can see you one more time. So bear with me. Cover the camera again to avoid motion sickness. And hopefully you can still hear me even though you can't see me. Sorry if there's like some background noise while I get the camera all situated, and you're gonna see my hand at the strangest angle. Okay, there we go. So again, please like this video if you did, comment on which card you liked best. And the most helpful thing you can do is subscribe to my channel and share this with others who you think would be interested. I do not only kind of tutorials like this is almost more of like a create along, craft along as I'm figuring out a project myself, but I do more formal tutorials on things I finalized as well, as unboxings, special events where you can win prizes, and what else? Oh, Newsday Tuesdays once a month, usually the beginning of the month, although this next time it'll be the last day of January, because otherwise then we'd be a week into February by the time I shared the news about Stampin' Up! Products and promotions with you. But yeah, just whatever you want to do, I'm happy to have you be a part of the Handcrafted Gifts community. That's why I do this, so I can create in community with others, because that's really where my heart's at. Getting to share what I love with the people that I love, and I just love people in general. So thank you for being part of that, whatever you do, and happy crafting.